glorious Buddhas, compassionate ones, throughout the infinite worlds of the 10 directions, grant your blessings, so that the inner and outer work that I accomplished today bears the fruits that multiply beyond imagining and extend to the very limits of this existence, to benefit myself, the ones I love, and the countless other beings of the 6 realms.
Hey, Julia. I think you'll stay with me probably for today's reading.
Okay,
But let's start with a short meditation.
okay, good.
I like this new format. All right. So, how is everybody? Haven't seen you in a
Good.
while.
Yeah.
Doing good, doing good.
Relax.
So, great. So today I think we have a
Vacation this week, so yay!
yeah. Oh, really?
Bad.
Wow!
As bad
Congrats.
as it could be.
Yes, very nice.
And is the weather getting better where you are?
Yeah, it's all sunny all week. Oh, thank God.
Same here.
Thank you for bringing a little bit of sun with you today. We're starting an interesting part in our studies called the way of practice, and well, it's interesting because it's practical. So it's going to be very down to earth observation, I guess, about the things that humans do and the things that they don't, and what's recommended, and so on. Obviously, we will stick to the 2,000 years old language that is sometimes simply inadequate, but we'll keep on trying to unpack that stuff with you guys. So let's start with a little shamatha meditation. Let's do 10 minutes and then we proceed with the lecture and then another meditation together. All right, so let's start with taking 3 deep breaths as I will ring the bell. So if you are on vacation this week, it's a perfect opportunity to start them well by relaxing yourself and disconnecting from daily things, work things. So let's just find peace together today. And sorry, I have lost audio for a second. So we can do that by focusing on our breath. So let's bring the attention to our breath. Take another deep one. Let us start by scanning our body from top to bottom, making sure that every muscle is relaxed. So you can relax your skull, surrounding eyes, cheeks, behind the head, and relax that area around the ears. Make sure your jaw is pretty relaxed. You can let your tongue rest on your palate with your teeth slightly open. You can have a little bit of air going through your lips. Then relax the neck, hands landing comfortably on your laps. And you can use my little trick of balancing yourself back and forth just a little bit, left and right. Make sure that your spine falls on its own axis with the neck. That you're sitting straight. Then relax the upper back and the lower back. There is pain or any tension. Relax the legs. Make sure they're providing a stable platform for your body. Down to the extremities of your fingers, toes as well. Relax your hands and your feet. Just deep breath and let yourself go. With each breath, you will imagine that the boundaries between you and the world are dissolved. You are slowly disappearing each breath and just mixing with the stuff around you. You become the universe and the universe becomes you. Just keep the attention that you visualize. So for those that are new, the practice of shamatha is a practice that aims to basically bring back your attention to the breath whenever it wanders. So if you catch yourself thinking, just label it as thinking, bring back attention to the breath. If you catch yourself feeling, you can stay with you a while, bring breath. If you have a itch or uncomfortable, you can also observe the discomfort of it. Your mind, the breath. Breath here represents your center, your, and we are working that muscle, we're flexing that muscle that allows go back to work, no matter what happens. So, mind, breathe. wonders, bring it back to your visualization. Let's take a deep breath. Let us come back slowly on our meditation. Unfortunately, I've had a sound connection problem during meditation, and I think I have to reload the world because I don't hear well. So I'll come back running. Would you guys all raise so that we don't get any sitting bugs as I rejoin? Okay, let's all raise from our cushions because there's a bug with VRChat up there. All right, can anybody hear me fine now?
Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Okay. So I think I can hear all of you as well, so that worked. All right, so let's go and have a look at our today's teaching. So Julia, would you help me with the reading today?
Sure. Gladly.
And welcome to those that just joined us, some for the first time. We're happy to have you. The format of this thing is that we meditate a little bit together, and then we do a reading. Then we talk about it. There's a little bit of question and answers going on, and after that we kind of meditate on the topic that we have learned, and that's pretty much the session in a nutshell. So, whenever you're ready, Jill.
The way of purification. The purification of the mind. People have worldly passions which lead them into delusions and sufferings. There are 5 ways to emancipate themselves from the bond of worldly passions. First, they should have right ideas of things, ideas that are based on careful observation and understand causes and effects and their significance correctly. Since the cause of suffering is rooted in the mind's desires and attachments, and since desire and attachment are related to mistaken observations by an ego self, neglecting the significance of the law of cause and effect, and since it is from these wrong observations, there can be peace only if the mind can be rid of these worldly passions. Second, people can get rid of these mistaken observations and resulting worldly passions by careful and patient mind control. With efficient mind control, they can avoid desires arising from the stimulation of the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and the subsequent mental processes, and by so doing, cut off the very root of all worldly passions. Third, they should have correct ideas with regard to the proper use of all things, that is, with regard to articles of food and clothing. They should not think of them in relation to comfort and pleasure, but only in their relation to the body's needs. Clothing is necessary to protect the body against extremes of heat and cold, and to conceal the shame of the body. Food is necessary for the nourishment of the body while it is training for enlightenment and Buddhahood. Worldly passions cannot arise through such thinking. 4. People should learn endurance. They should learn to endure the discomforts of heat and cold, hunger and thirst. They should learn to be patient when receiving abuse and scorn, for it is the practice of endurance that quenches the fire of worldly passions, which is burning up their bodies. 5th, people should learn to see and so avoid all danger. Just as a wise man keeps away from wild horses or mad dogs, so one should not make friends with evil men, nor should he go to places that wise men avoid. If one practices caution and prudence, the fire of worldly passions which is burning in their vitals will die down. There are 5 groups of desires in the world. Desires arising from the forms the eyes see, from the sounds the ears hear, from the fragrances the nose smells, from tastes pleasant to the tongue, from things that are agreeable to the sense of touch. From these 5 doors, desire come the body's love of comfort. Most people, being influenced by the body's love of comfort, do not notice the evils that follow comfort, and they are caught in a devil's trap like a deer in the forest caught in a hunter's trap. Indeed, these 5 doors of desires arising from the senses are the most dangerous traps. When caught by them, people are entangled in worldly passions and suffer. They should know how to get rid of these traps. There is no one way to get free from the trap of worldly passions. Suppose you caught a snake, a crocodile, a bird, a dog, a fox, and a monkey. 6 creatures of very different natures, and you tie them together with a strong rope and let them go. Each of these 6 creatures will try to go back to its own lair by its own method. The snake will seek a covering of grass. The crocodile will seek water. The bird will want to fly in the air. The dog will seek a village. The fox will seek the solitary ledges, and the monkey will seek the trees of a forest. In the attempt of each to go its own way, there will be a struggle, but being tied together by a rope, the strongest at any one time will drag the rest. Like the creatures in this parable, man is tempted in different ways by the desires of his 6 senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, touch, and the mind, and it is controlled by the predominant desire. If the 6 creatures are all tied to a post, they will try to get free until they are tired out, and then will lie down by the post. Just like this, if people will train and control the mind, there will be no further trouble from the other 5 senses. If the mind is under control, people will have happiness both now and in the future. People love their egoistic comfort, which is a love of fame and praise. But fame and praise are like incense that consumes itself and soon disappears. If people chase after honors and public acclaim and leave the way of truth, they are in serious danger and will soon have cause for regret. A man who chases after fame and wealth and love affairs is like a child who licks honey from the blade of a knife. While he is tasting the sweetness of honey, he has to risk hurting his tongue. He is like a man who carries a torch against a strong wind. The flame will sure burn his hands and face. One must not trust his own mind that is filled with greed, anger, and foolishness. One must not let his mind run free, but must keep it under strict control. To attain perfect mind control is a most difficult thing. Those who seek enlightenment must first rid themselves of the fire of all desires. Desire is a raging fire, and one seeking enlightenment must avoid the fire of desire, as a man carrying a load of hay avoids sparks. But it would be foolish for a man to put out his eyes for fear of being tempted by beautiful forms. The mind is master, and if the mind is under control, the weaker desires will disappear. It is difficult to follow the way to enlightenment, but it is more difficult if people have no mind to seek such a way. Without enlightenment, there is endless suffering in this world of life and death. When a man seeks the way to enlightenment, it is like an ox carrying a heavy load through a field of mud. If the ox tries to do its best without paying attention to other things, it can overcome the mud and take a rest. Just so, if the mind is controlled and kept on the right path, there will be no mud or greed to hinder it, and all its suffering will disappear. Those who seek the path of enlightenment must first remove all egoistic pride and be humbly willing to accept the light of Buddha's teachings. All the treasures of the world, all its gold and silver and honors, are not to be compared with wisdom and virtue. To enjoy good health, to bring true happiness to one's family, to bring peace to all, one must first discipline and control one's own mind. If a man can control his mind, he can find a way to enlightenment, and all wisdom and virtue will naturally come to him. Just as treasures are uncovered from the earth, so virtue appears from good deeds, and wisdom appears from a pure and peaceful mind. To walk safely through the maze of human life, one needs the light of wisdom and the guidance of virtue. The Buddha's teaching, which tells people how to eliminate greed, anger, and foolishness, is a good teaching, and those who follow it attain the happiness of a good life. Human beings tend to move in the direction of their thoughts. If they harbor greedy thoughts, they become more greedy. If they think angry thoughts, they become more angry. If they hold foolish thoughts, their feet move in that direction. At harvest time, farmers keep their herds confined, lest they break through the fences onto the field and give cause for complaint or for being killed. So people must closely guard their minds against dishonesty and misfortune. I must eliminate thoughts that stimulate greed, anger, and foolishness, but encourage thoughts that stimulate charity and kindness. When spring comes and the pastures have an abundance of green grass, farmers turn their cattle loose. But even then, they keep a close watch over them. It is so with the minds of people. Even under the best of conditions, the mind will bear watching. At one time, Shakyamuni Buddha was staying in the town of Kausambi. In this town there was one who resented him and who bribed wicked men to circulate false stories about him. Under these circumstances, it was difficult for his disciples to get sufficient food from the begging, and there was much abuse in that town. Ananda said to Shakyamuni, "We had better not stay in a town like this. There are other and better towns to go to. We had better leave this town." The Blessed One replied, "Suppose the next town is like this. What shall we do then?" "Then we move to another?" The Blessed One said, "No, Ananda. There will be no end in that way. We had better remain here and bear the abuse patiently until it ceases, and then we move to another place. There are profit and loss, slander and honor, praise and abuse, suffering and pleasure in this world. The Enlightened One is not controlled by these external things. They will cease as quickly as they come."
Thank you, Julia.
Welcome.
All right. So maybe just before I start with my own interpretation of what we have just read, what does that evoke in you? What do you make of this lecture today?
Well, that it's sometimes you gotta deal with the situation at hand instead of, like but in that one village, you can't just always say just moving away, and sometimes you just have to face it on hand,
Anybody else with a different interpretation of what we've just read? The entire thing?
Yeah, that you always need to be aware about your all the things you get in by you need to watch all your senses so you don't make the wrong assumptions and choices.
Very good. Is it Niala that was about to say something as well?
I wanted to say the last thing that she said, that we have to stay in the city. It's because if we go to another one, there will be like always the same situations, maybe a little bit different, but we will always consume the same things. Like we will always get the same situation, and we have to remain like, we have to, oh my god, I'm so shy. We have to accept what we have. It will be okay afterwards. Maybe there will be something, the outcome will be better if we stay instead of then we leave.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very good. All right. Today's talk for me is about freedom. Freedom with a capital F. But what is freedom? What's your definition of freedom, guys?
That you're not chained down. That you're not, I'd say that you're not chained down. Well, both physically as mentally, meaning that you can be wherever you want to be and be able to live your life without limitations put onto you.
Right? Is it that to have freedom is to be able to do the things that will not, in theory or in practice, be prevented by other forces, basically? For example, when we speak of objects, let's say there's a lock on the door, and you will say, well, the lock is not free because it's rusted. So the rust is actually holding it there. But also you could say it of a prisoner because it's kind of being held against its will. Maybe the prisoner would do something else. So when you have this force that is applied to something and that is preventing it from doing what it wants, I guess we are in the realm of freedom. Now, what it wants could be put to question. There is this quote about freedom, the end of freedom being reached where the freedom of the other begins. So we live in a system, and it's important to think about that morally and ethically as well. But what is strange, actually, in today's reflection, I would say, is that we are sometimes our own captive. We keep ourselves captives through our mental process. So one of the main points is that we constantly enslave ourselves without even noticing it today. And if that is so, then one of the first points that was made in the book was that through careful observation, I could make myself free. The book said if I had right ideas about things, it would help me become free. What do you think that relates to? How can I make myself free? By looking at things carefully.
By looking at your limiting beliefs?
I'd say by not letting yourself guiding by your desires and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, actually, the way that the first point was in the book was closer to desires. There, they were making a point about the transiency of things. You know, that through careful observation we can rejoice in the transiency of things and realize that everything is impermanent, and that this impermanence could be a thing of beauty. For example, a flower doesn't need to last forever. I can appreciate it while it's alive and while it's blooming and while it's beautiful, but by night it might close its petals again, or it might wither away and die soon. It's on a short life cycle. So if I pluck the flower and hope for it to live forever, I will probably be sad, and I will keep myself in that prison of frustration where I want flowers to live forever. While if I just leave it be and observe it for what it is, I can have a more wholesome relationship with the object. So it is free to allow things to be the way they are, to allow things to be transient, to allow things to be impermanent. There's great freedom. It is true even about our lives and the people that we love. Sometimes we go through grief. Sometimes people we love get sick. Sometimes we get sick and we grieve about that. Well, if we look at life as something of beauty that is simply passing, it helps us recover some of that ease of movement, of that freedom. And then the lecture went on and spoke about mind control. And that's interesting because it's a lecture about freedom. But isn't control the opposite of freedom? What could we make of this idea? What is that mind control thing? Is it a thing? Should we control our mind?
I think
Any idea about this?
I think without control, freedom can lead to chaos, where everything runs amok and wild, and then you pretty much lose your way as well.
That's an interesting point. So, in accounting in companies, there is a controller, right? And what is the function of the controller in a company? It is to monitor basically the expenses and the revenues, and to make sure that nobody is abusing the finance of the company, and to make sure that the company will remain healthy over the years, and that it will accomplish its mission. So instead of thinking about control there in terms of shackles and chains, let us try to think about the controlling process of accounting, where we are basically monitoring the mind. And then it starts making sense, right? I want to monitor my mind to make sure that it's not becoming trapped somewhere, that I'm not tricking myself into attachment or into a foolish desire that will lead me nowhere. So through this process of controlling, of monitoring, which is the word I prefer there, I can see that it helps. And it doesn't suppose any action. Of course, it allows for it. If I don't like what I'm seeing through my monitoring, then I can use my thinking mind and scaffold a new plan. Decide that I will act differently, and that I will not handle that desire or that attachment simply by embracing it. Maybe I will provide myself with an alternative. So that monitoring, although it is not about restricting myself, it could be about it. To prevent chaos, as you were saying, Casper. For example, if I have the desire to listen to my music very loud at 2 o'clock in the morning, it is probably a good idea to notice that I am having this desire, and to refrain myself a little bit so that I don't wake up my entire neighborhood. So that would be a great place where control could turn into action. And then it was the lecture was referring to another means of emancipation. It was saying that if we use things properly, if we just use things properly, we could be freer. And what does it mean to use things properly? Anyone about this? No? Yes? Not sure?
Could it pertain to the under or over application of a concept or train of thought or something like this?
I think you're quite close, yeah. For example, I would relate it to the nature or the function of the object more than anything. For example, a good car is a good car. It doesn't necessarily need to be a Mercedes or a BMW. Of course, you could pay for that, but then you're paying for a brand and you're paying for status. So, same thing with clothing. Actually, I told that to you guys before. I come from a humble family, and that means not just me, but my cousins and my uncles and the entire family was quite humble. And one of my cousins became a lawyer, and she bought the car that she could get as a lawyer. And she was told by her boss, don't park that in front of the office. It disguises our look. It's hurting our brand. That's a crappy car. Go hide it in the back. But they would also do that to her with her clothing. She was not wearing the right brand of clothing for a lawyer. So what she would do is that she would go and buy used clothes of higher brands, and she would unstitch the tickets, the brand names, and she would stitch it to cheap clothes, and she would wear them, and then it was fine. People agreed with the way they found her beautiful, because now she had the brand name on her cheap clothes. So that's an improper relation with things. When you are looking at the brand of your shoes, of your car, of your phone, obviously you're adding a layer of misconception and of drama to the things, and that steals your freedom away. Because all of a sudden, well, in the beginning you wanted to make phone calls, but all of a sudden you have to save money to get an iPhone, which, you know, I guess an LG phone will help you do just that, or a Chinese phone, a quarter of the price, will also allow you to do that. So you're not free the minute that you walk into that discipline. One of my favorite that was referred at the end of the lecture also by the Buddha himself was that endurance quenches the fire of worldly passions, which is burning up their body. So basically, what we're told there is that endurance helps on the path of freedom. But how so? And here's my experience of this. If I'm watching a movie at night, I may get a little bit bored watching the movie, and so I start craving a snack usually. I either want popcorn or chips or whatever sweets or something to drink. And I've observed myself, and I realize it's basically me being understimulated. Like the movie is not enough, I need to be doing something else to keep myself busy. So although I know that, when the actual craving kicks in, it becomes this tremendous ball of energy. Like for a second, it's like if I don't get that popcorn, I'm gonna die. Like my mind will be sucked into this. I might not be paying attention too much about the movie anymore, and I might be instead juggling chips and popcorns and chocolate bars in my mind instead of watching what's up there. So when that happens, it is actually sort of a painful experience if I'm not going to indulge into it. If I say, oh no, I'm not going to indulge it, I'm not going to get that snack, I'm just going to focus on my movie or on the people I am with or on my quietness, this energy doesn't go away immediately. So you need to be able to sustain that for a while. You need to be able to take that energy and channel it or transform it into something else if you really want to get on the other side of it. Otherwise, you'll just stay with the craving and it's going to become worse and worse. So that's where endurance is important. Because as our friend was saying earlier, if you just indulge, then next time you will indulge again. And that's pretty much how addictions begin. If I cannot say no to that next beer or that next chocolate cookie or that next unhealthy relation, then I will just repeat the pattern over and over again. So am I free? I mean, if I can be manipulated by popcorn, how free am I? So we need to be very careful, very wary, and we need to develop a sort of, without falling into asceticism, a sort of resilience, a sort of fortitude that we can deal with those painful occurrences, with those cravings, and get to the other side of that. To see and avoid all danger was another point, and it's mainly about not tempting yourself needlessly. So if you have a problem with alcohol, it's probably a good idea to avoid bars for a while. If you can skip the aisle at the supermarket, that's even better. And if you are especially fond of something that is or could become problematic, avoid thinking about it altogether. Because as the lecturer was pointing out, we tend to move in the direction of what we think about. So if you obsess about, I don't know, getting a girlfriend, you will probably try and hang out with more girls. Well, same thing. If you're obsessing with cars, you will be around them and so on. So it makes it easier. I call that dancing with the devil, tempting yourself needlessly there. So it's not about putting your eyes out, as they were saying up there. The things are still there, and if they are presented to you, you can look at them and deal with the consequence, but just don't do it on purpose. Right? The thing about the mind is that we delude ourselves into thinking we can multitask. But if you pay close attention to your mind, you will see that you cannot really. When you're listening, you're not really looking. And when you're looking, you're not really tasting. There's always like one sense that is taking over them all. And one way that this has always been extremely obvious to me is when you shut out certain senses. For example, at night, when you turn off the lights, all sounds just become louder because your hearing is taken over. But at the same time, if you plug your ears and you're like in a public setting, you will need to use your eyes twice as much to read the environment. Recently, I have lived a strange experience. We were developing a virtual reality platform, and through the prototyping process, there was a test that we ran without 3D audio. And if we were to scatter around the island here, and without 3D audio means we would hear everybody kind of flat, just like on the phone. And I was telling you, locate your friend, and you only had your eyes to try and find their avatar, you would see that it becomes quite a different deal. It's difficult when you're not using all of your senses. But we're really, for example, I realized that in VR we're using our ears a lot. This 3D positioning is super important. And so if you cut it off, visual field needs to step in and compensate. So that's why we've seen people like Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles being so good at music. They are very sensitive about sound and touch. But most importantly, when a stimulus attracts one of our senses, it does not only just like wake it up. That's what we tend to think, you know. Let's say there's a bomb that explodes in the distance or a sharp sound. We think like, oh, I've noticed that. But try and do that experience. Observe yourself next time you are stimulated. And what you will find is that if there was a firework over there, your mind actually flies to it. It travels mentally to that space. And if you're chewing something and you're trying to taste it very mindfully, you will see that your entire mind is traveling and moving inside your mouth and kind of focusing on that. Same way, if you're trying to remember something from your past, the entire world will disappear and you will be inside of your mind for a while and go into those images of the past. So whatever the sense you're focusing on, if you are not careful, it can steal you completely and enslave you. Especially if it's a thing of beauty or a thing that causes fear. Then if the desire to be with it or away from it is strong, we are basically being thrown out of balance. We are not in control anymore. That stimulus that challenged us is now in control. So we start operating on instinct and reacting instead of using our intelligence at this point. So it is just like an animal that would be misdirected by a hunter. You know, he would make the path more difficult on the left and then put something shiny here and a little bit of scent there. And so the animal, kind of following its senses, ends up falling into the trap. Well, that is how we lose our freedom to our senses. And that's why the central teaching of Buddhism is about awareness and mindfulness. If you're not using your awareness to look within at what's happening, at what your senses are doing, and if you did not flex that muscle of being mindful, then you cannot notice and bring yourself back to your center, to your peace. Instead, you're just stolen away. So if the 6 creatures that were described as the 5 senses plus the mind were the senses. So this is the post. This is the post that they are tied to. Your mindfulness and your awareness are the post that you use for mind control. This monitoring is the mind control. And then it carried on by notions of fame and praise. So let me ask you this. How could fame and praise lead to regret? because that's the affirmation that was made there. How could fame and praise lead us to regret?
If you ask too much, maybe you know that it is like too much to ask, and you ask it anyway.
What do you mean? When I am famous, I ask too much of others, or they ask too much of me?
So like the question was, when the praise is regret, right?
No, how could fame and praise? So if I become famous, and I am being praised by other, how could, if I pay attention to that, how could it lead me to regret?
Praise, like when you're famous.
When I say you're wonderful, you're the best, you're much better than everyone else. If I praise you like this,
Like,
how could that lead to regret?
Fleeting,
Yeah.
I think
Go ahead, Malka. Finish your point then.
It's okay.
Okay, then Casper.
I think fame and praise, those things come from outside sources. So if you live by fame and praise, so if you need these outside sources from someone else in order to feel fulfilled and satisfied, then you are not getting satisfied by living by yourself, and you will have to constantly change your own self to what others might want you to be, because that's what you're chasing for, someone else's praise and to be their fame. So you're not living for yourself anymore, you're living for someone else. And eventually this might turn into regrets, because this is something you often see even with movie stars in the real world, where they live in sometimes their virtual imagery what other people think they are, and the compliments other people give them, even though they only know them from their music or from their acting career, but they do not really notice what they really could be in real life, nor do they really care, because they only care about a fictional personality so far. So sometimes to keep the praise going, you might adapt your real self with that of a fake personality that you let take over. But at the end, you might still fall into a trap of depression and sadness because you are lost in something fake.
That's very insightful. I like the way you put it, the fact that it comes from outside, so what is given can also be taken away from you. And in fact, since we know about impermanence, we pretty much know that it will. And we know also about fashion and about stardom, and we know that they're pretty much a flavor of the day. So these things, could be taken away and leave a sour taste in your mouth. But the regret, I think you laid one aspect very well of living for others and not for oneself. That's definitely something I could regret. Or I could regret it as a wonderful time of my life that's gone now, and I wish I was back in those years when I was famous. We see often with child stars and personalities like that are shooting stars, I would say. They think it's going to last forever, and then they spend most of their lives after that kind of depressed and longing for those years. So that's a bit sad. So isn't it better, again, just like we were saying, let's relate to things simply and directly. Well, it's probably better to relate to ourselves simply and directly as well. As human beings, nothing less and nothing more. Just perfectly imperfect beings. And when you start doing that, again, you get a sense of freedom because you don't feel like you have to mold yourself and transform yourself and change yourself anymore. Doesn't mean you shouldn't improve. Doesn't mean you cannot aspire to the higher things of life. But if you don't change, it doesn't bother you as much. You don't feel miserable, at least. And there's a part after that that's kind of relates to this, and that was talking about getting rid of desire. And I always hate it when I find that in scriptures because I feel like it requires more explanation, and it's sometimes taken literally. So, if you start fighting your desires, you're basically putting yourself in another prison. You have just packaged yourself as the enemy of desire, and that's the new you. So that's not very useful. Getting rid of desire is a consequence, not something, not a fight that we pick up. Desires occur naturally, and they shouldn't be suppressed. Again, that is what is meant by the scripture when it says you do not need to take your eyes out. You can still look at things. But what is important is to observe your desire and notice their sticky quality. Notice what they're doing to you. And so as we educate ourselves about our own desires, we begin to see how foolish most of them are. And as you notice that, then the next time you desire it, it has much less power. Just like my popcorn story, telling you about it, isn't it foolish that I would be led by a couple of snacks like this and that it would completely overcome my mind? How feeble would that be, So I don't want to be a slave to popcorn anymore. And just by stating that and noticing that, I am more likely to not indulge in it next time. So desire falls off of its own accord. You need to be aware of it, you need to scrutinize it, but you don't need necessarily to do anything about it. The process, have it wither away. And as we grow in this practice, we also grow in faith for the services that our practice can render us. And our dominion over our mind also naturally increase. So if I manage to solve that popcorn problem, well, after that, if I also have a drinking problem, I may kind of use the same process or the same willpower to say, no, I'm not going to have that bottle of beer, or no, I'm not going to have that drink, or I'm not going to call him or call her back. So it allows for more space, for more self-respect, for more tenderness, and that's kind of the beginning of freedom again. Buddhism, to me, is the path of freedom. We are taught by society and by our parents to live in a very small box that they have packaged for us, where you have to study, you have to get married, you have to own a house and work and own a dog and buy a second car. And so we start our lives with a lot of these conceptions. And also you should be, well dressed and beautiful, and you should have money, and you should be kind, and you should be so many things, so many shoulds. And so we start our lives in this. And as we observe ourselves and our desires and all of these processes, we find all of these things one by one to be absolutely untrue. And each little thing that you remove is like punching a hole, punching a window in the box, or cracking the eggshell so that you can be born. Right? Once you're done cracking everything, then what you find is complete freedom. There is nothing limiting you anymore. And it is strange that basically at the adult age, you are basically unleashed by your parent. They remove the leash. But just like a good tame dog, we stay within the limits of the land on which we grew. So we need to realize that we can actually go farther and that nothing will choke us. There was a mention saying that it was difficult to follow the path of enlightenment when one has no mind for it. I think I would have put that with the senses, though. What do you think it means that it's difficult to find enlightenment when you have no mind for it?
You can be stable in your mind, so your mind cannot absorb the things that you can come to conclusion if you're not if you're just too busy for it.
Yeah, that's very close to what I would say. Which is there something you want to say, Time?
Oh no, I was just gonna add that maybe it's a matter of openness too. A lot of people are restricting, or they feel really separated from, external train of thought or concepts, things beyond themselves. So a lot of people just remain guarded to these things, so they won't change.
Right. So we were establishing earlier that when I'm stimulated by something outside of me and my sense kind of bite into it, I can get sucked into it. And what it does actually is that my mind closes on it. So just piggybacking on this idea of openness there. So my mind closes on that stimulus. And while my mind is closed, then there is no room for anything else to get in. So yes, I need to keep it open. But also simply, if my mind is distracted, then my mind is not doing the work, if you will. My mind is not currently observing and making intelligent decisions. It's just basically stuck in one subject or another. So it's not very useful. So if your mind is not available, that's how I would interpret that bit. If you have no mind available to kind of do that work, that self-development, then obviously the work won't happen. But on the contrary, if just like the ox with the cart in the mud, there was no distraction, then you could probably accomplish great things. In a way, it's like becoming hard-headed about peace. I like to think of awareness and mindfulness like this. Like you made this hardcore choice in your life that you are about love and you are about peace, and nothing is going to distract you from it. But it does happen anyway. You get distracted anyway, but you're hard-headed. So you say to yourself, no, it didn't. It didn't really distract me, and here I'm back on my path. So that's kind of the attitude, the mental fortitude of just choosing peace over anything else. And no matter what happens, you go back to it. You refuse to compromise it. And what's interesting is that when you manage to live peacefully like that, psychologically and emotionally, now the book is telling us that this leads to all wisdom and virtue. And that's an interesting process. Actually, there are two ways that Buddhism is taught. Some are lists of qualities, and they tell you, generosity and patience and resilience and concentration. You have also the Eightfold Path. There are many systems that kind of say these are the qualities that we should cultivate. And once we have cultivated them perfectly, then you're pretty much enlightened. But there is the other way around that says, well, become enlightened, and then you will have all of those qualities for free. So how do you think that works, that part of it? How is it that if I truly wake up, then there will be more wisdom and more virtue in my life happening just naturally?
Because we recognize stuff, otherwise.
Sorry, the sound cut a little bit, Xalco. What did you say?
I was saying, because we can recognize things as they are, and then we don't get trapped in them. Was that more clearly?
Yes, I understood. So, what happens when I don't see things as they are? Just to expand on this a bit.
I mistake them and, maybe go after them, for example. Like a pleasure,
So
for example,
I
think, yeah.
No, Doc, carry on. Carry on. It's interesting.
Like when I see something that I see is I like it, I get attached to it, or what I my do feels good, and but if I see, for example, what it leads to, as an enlightened person might see, then he would not act on it, and he would just pass it, let it pass. I mean.
Yeah, so that's close. My take on this is close. It's also a little bit different, meaning that. Oh yes, Casper, you wanted to add something?
Well, I was thinking one of the key points about meditation and also what Buddhism teaches is about being aware. Because most of the time we are led by desires and led by things that control us instead of the other way around, and by living with awareness, like that it gives you a sense of freedom. I would say to be, if you're enlightened, you are probably aware at all times. So in other ways, you are not longer chained by desires or by being manipulated by your surroundings. So I'd say you are probably a lot wiser than someone that's not enlightened, because those people are not really aware, I'd say.
So, to me, it's about, let's say, conflicting agendas. When the opposite of peace, for me, would be fear. Could call it war. War causes fear, but according to Buddhist philosophy, it would be closer to fear. So, if I am in a state of fear, then I am experiencing distress and I'm experiencing desires of self-preservation. I want to save my butt, basically. I want to do what's right for me to survive and to be well, and or my family to be well, or because I can expand the concept of self to my things and my people, and what, there's an integrity there that I try to preserve. So when I am in distress like this and I am trying to save myself, I cannot really fully collaborate with others, because no matter what it is that they're bringing to me and that they're proposing or suggesting to me, I will be looking at it from the point of view of my self-preservation. And the fact is that most people are scared like this. More people are trying to make it, or trying to survive. It's always something. They worry about bills, they worry about work, they worry about their relationships. And so what happens when two scared people, when two persons that are trying to survive on their own meet, is that you can have a conflicting agenda. Everybody's after the same banana, basically, or after the same money, or maybe after the same person. And that's very conflictive. Now, if I'm at peace, I do not have that experience of fear. And then I'm devoid of agenda, basically. And so when I'm devoid of agenda, I can look at things for what they are. And I can relate to them for what they are, to people for what they are. And even though they would bring a conflicting agenda, even though they would come and tell me about survival and about getting my banana, I'll be more than happy to just give them the banana. Or to do a bit like that Solomon story, where the two distressed mothers came to him and said, "This is my baby, that baby belongs to me, I want to keep it." And Solomon said, "Oh, well, okay, then cut it in half and you both can have one half of the baby." So then the true mother gave up, because all of a sudden she didn't want to hurt her baby. And so Solomon, there, not being involved in the conflict, could use a trick, a tactic, and use the fear of the person to find a wise resolution. So that's kind of what it is. When you're a neutral observer, you can be more objective. You can think more, feel more, take more time, and reach better conclusions. You're not reacting, you are acting from the good place. And so that's kind of how all of those virtues are back. If I'm not fearful, if I feel I have enough bananas, then I can give them to you. So that's generosity. If I am not fearful and I don't feel threatened by you, then I can love you. So that's love. And I can be tender towards you. And that's another one. So just list every good qualities that you can think of, and you will always see that they relate with someone that is peaceful, and not with passions and burning feelings. So, long story short, if we indeed walk in the direction of our thoughts, then the content of our mind is our most basic responsibility, isn't it? And that's the idea here of mind purification. Let's rename it mind monitoring. It is our most basic responsibility to know what's going on inside of us, emotionally and intellectually, and to make informed decision about it. So, if until now you didn't understand why it's important to have a steady meditation practice, that's the reason why. You are training those muscles and that awareness to kick in when you need them. And you might have heard that later on the Buddhist path, it's not necessary to meditate. You might have come in contact with such teachings. And there are two reasons for this. One is that there are advanced techniques that make you look at the world a certain way, that there is no room for anything else but peace. But second, through genuine realization, what happens is that triggers don't work anymore. Desires have been, most of them, diffused. Fear is not so much present in your life. You have really integrated that you're not competing with anyone. And so when there is no more triggers, then what is it that you're monitoring? So that's kind of the fruition of the path. If you do practice this for a while and you start diffusing all of those automatic behaviors, then at some point the need to sit on the cushion will become less and less. You won't be shielded from a new situation, such as a plane crash or something very exceptional happening, and that might shake you off because you've never practiced with it, and then hopefully your awareness kicks back in and you deal with it appropriately, or at least you are reminded of the teachings at this point. But yes, there is a time in Buddhism where you can just go and live blissfully without too much very highly disciplined practice. After years, mind you, not after a couple of months of practice, but after many years of practice, and well done practice. As closing words, I would probably just do this reminder that when we are angry, it's nothing but our frustrated desires that are manifesting. And desire is nothing but the manifestation of fear. And fear is born from misunderstanding why we're here and the meaning of our lives. Fear is so deeply coded into us. The other day I was looking at my cat and I had the following insight. This cat has been living with us for a number of years now, and it's a very nice cat. Comes and jumps on the furniture and just purrs and enjoys our company on its own time. Sometimes it's just knocked out in a corner and sleeping all day, but mostly what happens with this cat is if I walk towards it a little bit too fast, or if he doesn't see me coming, or if somebody new enters the house, that cat is pretty much afraid most of the time. It's
number one response, maybe because we have a kid in the house, but his number one response is to kind of mistrust, to be kind of fearful of, oh, what's going to happen? What's that sound? What's going on? And if you look at a mice or at any wild animal, you will see that it's kind of the same. They will fear you 95% of the time, and they will come towards you that 5% of the time that you have something that they want, whether it's food or a shelter or a relief of some kind. Well, that's not just animals, that's us. The next time you look at an animal in the wild displaying a fearful behavior, take some time to look at it and observe it and relate it to your own behaviors and to our behaviors as humans. Because we're very mistrustful, very fearful of everything. And what we want is to grow that 5% where we're able to trust, because we are not in the wild anymore. So we want to have that 5% becoming the 95%. We need to flip the table on this. And then we can enjoy a beautiful, peaceful life. So that would be it for me today. Any questions or commentaries or suggestions?
Well, it's okay.
Malka?
No, it's okay. You can ask first.
No, you spoke first again. I'm sure Casper can wait a little bit.
Like how in Buddhism we see the desire, let's say love. We love others so that others can love us, and like it is like a symbiotic relationship. But if the desire is born from fear, so what about love? Because love is not something that maybe it's like like. Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean, and that's a very important question. Because what is that love that you can accumulate to the point that then you can give it to somebody, and that they can give it to you and you can receive it and store it away? What is this love actually that is so physical that we mere humans can manipulate it? What is love, actually? I think the most important question that you're touching there, Malka, is what is actually love? Yeah? Because, for example, possessiveness, is that love? If I want to possess you?
No.
It is sometimes confused with love, though, right?
Yeah, a lot of times.
Yeah, and what is it based in? Isn't it fear?
Yeah, this one, like, if it's possession, it's based on fear, but if it's like love that comes out from love, so there is no fear in there. Like this possession, this desire to love someone or something, or be loved, it's not really comes from fear.
Isn't it from the fear of being alone that we want people to be in our lives?
No, I think like maybe love, when you love something or someone, you just love because you love. You want to share this feeling with others, and you say them, I love you, not in like, possession way, but in a way that I want to bring to you happiness and joy, and you'll be good. And it's not based on fear. Maybe this is like one of the feelings that is not based on fear. The only one maybe.
So if I love you and truly love you, and you have the aspiration to travel the world, should I say, no, I love you too much, stay by my side, or should I love you while you're traveling away from you?
Stay by my side is a part of possession, so this will be only possession talking basically. Because when you truly love, you don't really bossy about someone or something. You can just like observe its existence and enjoy it as it is.
Right. So if you love someone like you love a flower, I would say, yes, you're a live flower, not a flower that you've plucked, but a flower in its natural
Exactly,
environment.
that's not love, yeah.
So if you can love it in its natural environment and enjoy its beauty and its fragrance and say, oh, I love that flower, I think that is love. If you need to pluck the flower and take it home with you, then that's probably not love. But here's the thing. When you're loving the flower, are you doing anything? Or are you just not opening yourself and receiving something?
I think you're ignorant when you sing the flower in the meaning of you observing the flower existence, and this by itself can be enough, because some flowers, when you try to give them water or like whatever you think it is right for them, it will only bring the opposite. So the true love maybe is not of possessing like the thing or someone, but let it be, like just like platonic love maybe, or not. No, wait, platonic is when people not touch, so I'm not sure. Yeah.
So that is very important to me, the subject that we're touching, and it goes hand in hand with freedom, actually, because to me, love cannot really exist without freedom. If I cannot allow the flower to be free, then I cannot love the flower either. And if I cannot allow myself to be free in my mind and in my heart, then I'm not loving myself. So love, I often like to say, is what is there when we're not doing anything. Love is the natural state of things. Love is always there. What happens is that sometimes we're not attuned to it. We're not tapping into it. We're not feeling it because we are stuck in our small minds and in our small emotions that are mostly motivated by fear. But if we can get that out of the way, then you will experience love for your friends, for your surroundings, for family, for animals, everything. If you just attune yourself to it, then you can take the entire world in. And that's the most beautiful, limitless love. And it can be or not be platonic, you know, that depends also on the will of the people around us. But to me, that is the true love part, and that is the goal of Buddhism. When we try to go back to the peace, let's say this is the peace. This is the freedom, and this is the love that we are looking for. That state of perfect openness when we are not resisting anything in the universe. That is the enlightened state. And so what our awareness and mindfulness are used for is to notice the absence of that, is to notice when I am disconnected from that, so that I can bring myself to that state of connection and openness. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfectly. Yeah.
So that is my practice, actually, Malka. I call it the love and the awareness of it. Yes, Casper?
Listening to you speak, I was thinking about that the whole funny thing about love is the way people follow it. It's almost like a tradition, like when they get married, then they put a ring to each other. It's almost like everything is almost baked into possession. It's like, now let's say our vows, we will do this, but we will not do this because we love each other. Now let's put this ring to your finger because we love each other. Now let's sign a contract because I don't trust you having a part of my money. And before you know it, they go after your child support and you're left without a house. But I mean, in a way, the funny thing is that it's also kind of baked, the whole concept about marriage, about signing a contract, about putting a ring on it, all in the name of love. It's all about fearing that you're going to lose that person if you do not do something like that, like sign that contract, put a ring on that finger, having a good ring, and such stuff, and such and such and such. It's all a lot of material.
What was the origins of the rings, Julia? I know you know that, but I forgot it. Are you there? I think you're muted.
No?
I don't know it. No.
Okay, oh, you don't. Well, I thought it was related to slavery or something like that. Like this is actually like the ring of the shekel that you're putting on someone to show that they belong to you and that there's a tie between. But there are mystical origins also. That some relate them to the rings of Saturn and so many other things. But yeah, it definitely denotes possession. By the way, a friend of mine who's very wealthy met this much younger woman, and she had him. They signed a prenup. He wanted to protect himself, but one of the terms of the prenup was that he was to take her on an international trip 3 times a year. Otherwise, she didn't love him anymore. So I found that quite funny. And he did sign that, you know, he was okay with it. So I guess some people, well, a lot of people kind of calculate points in love, and then it doesn't. Is it love, or is it like a mutually beneficial exchange, a transaction?
I do have a question about marriage in terms of, you know, now, especially for the church and especially in Christian marriage, you kind of like, it's for life, they say, but then they marry like 3-4 times, sometimes in their lifetime, so it's kind of funny in that regard. But what I mean is that there are in specific cultures that you can like sign a contract, let's say you marry for like 5 or 6 years, and at the end of that contract you come together and say, well, is our love still strong enough to lengthen this and go on? I don't know where they do this, but I heard about certain cultures and countries doing this, that it's like more like on term, and then at the end of the term they still see like do we still feel enough for each other to keep going? Because in a lot of especially very tight religions, sometimes people stay together just because, you know, their religion says so, and it's more like a prison than freedom anymore.
Yeah, but it could become a name as well if both are strong believers and they are aiming to, I don't know, in conditional love, and that's what they're working on, and they do that over a number of years. They can actually have a better and better relationship as time goes by. To me, the idea behind monogamy, and that's how it kind of expresses itself in nature, is mainly to nurture the kids, right? It's just that in the human realms, we tend to have very slow development compared to other species that are able to walk after a day or two, and that reach sexual maturity after a year. In the human realm, that happens over the period of 20 years. So that's why we kind of tend to institutionalize it, to make sure that people are going to stay together and that the young ones are going to have everything that they need. Now, there is a system in society. There are many other ways also to care for our young ones. So is it outdated or not? I couldn't say. I have nothing against or for it. But I do think that to take 2 very different people that meet under certain circumstances and to think that they will love one another forever is a bit foolish to believe that this is what happens every time. So if they share a goal, they will probably stay on the same path for a longer while. Otherwise, paths tend to cross one another in life. That's how relationship works, you know. Imagine somebody on the left and somebody else on the right, and they're moving towards one another, but all of a sudden they're on their way. They have different goals, so and the path will cross like an X, and that's what most relationships are about. Whether it's about friends or co-workers or love relationships, we tend to walk together as we need one another, or as we are made to coexist, and then we separate. And that's also the way of life. So see, if you are shackled into a wedding, and that's what you think about it, see again that looking at things from their impermanent nature can free you. you now understand that you are both changing, that you're going different places, and that it's okay. You don't need to blame one or the other for going away. It's just okay that it happens like that. So you find peace and freedom in this again. But there are so many different types of relationship. It's difficult to encompass them all in this little talk. Anything else about today's talk?
Well, I might add something because we are talking about love, and but I also, I mean, I don't have to add anything to the possession part because for most people, love is possession. So, me, I learned a lot in an open relationship, and also for me, that love is something that is basically happening within you. It's not related to anything. It's more like a space that you are in, and most people mistake that for like having something external, and then the possession happens. And also in regards to the path of enlightenment, there are many ways to enlightenment, and love and compassion and kindness is one of them. So actually doing something for others to the extent where we just give up ourselves or not taking more than we need is also a way to enlightenment, and that's what I also find fascinating.
Definitely, because if you decide that love and compassion is the way to go, then you are basically doing that mindfulness thing. You are attuning yourself constantly back to love. And if you walk and live and breathe love, then obviously you enjoy quite a lot of bliss as well. You're not creating too much bad consequences and karma around you. So yeah, thank you. That's a good insight. So I'll go there. All right. So let us do our little meditation. And usually we end up with well, actually that was kind of the Vipassana part where we discuss. And now let us move into a Tonglen meditation. So process of giving and taking. And today let's practice on ourselves. Let us think of all our recent experiences. Let us reflect on the past month and every time that we've followed our desires or our senses a little bit too much, and let us find the fortitude and the energy of enduring through these difficult cravings, so that we can act better in the future. So let us just reflect in silence until the next bell rings. following your breath with about 25% of your attention. You can anchor yourself to it. And breathe. that's it for today. I was just curious. I see we still have some new guys that made it till the end. What did you guys think about your first session with us?
Oh, well, it wasn't my first, but as always, it's a nice one. It's been too long since I sat in a session. Just only sorry I was a little late this time.
Oh, hey, Time.
Oh, no problem.
Hello, Casper. How are you?
I'm doing good.
That's nice. Hope everyone else is doing well today as well.
Super.
Oh, how about you, copyrighted? Happy fish, I guess. Okay, good. Pikachu
Happy fish.
emoted for us. So.
Yeah.
Someone in my
Well.
stream said he also enjoyed it very much.
Oh, super. Thank you. Yeah, I always forget I'm on TV, so.
You're gonna
I'm
become a
also
Twitch
back.
streamer. Buddhist Twitch streamer. That will have a nice ring to it.
So let us close the session with our dedication, and also it was supposed to be this week, but I guess we'll do it next week. We have a new world that is somewhat interactive, where I want to take you guys to do the meditation, and the world itself will be kind of turned into a teaching, so we can do that next week. All right.
Looking forward to it.
May or may
Whatever
not
you
be
want to
from
say.
my waifu.
Oh, Casper.
For the benefit of beings without exception, I dedicate without any reticence whatsoever all the merit accrued through virtuous acts to the incomparable expanse of totality.
Thank you. We may now exit the shrine.
I was behind the Terminator. Where did he go?
Gone.
I guess he'll be back. Get it? Never mind.
Indeed.
You have really nice avatar for meditation.